Imagine this. You're a single mom, struggling to make ends meet, working multiple jobs just to put food on the table for your child. Every day feels like a battle, and hope is something you've almost given up on. Then, out of nowhere, an opportunity falls into your lap, a job offer from a wealthy, powerful CEO who promises not just financial stability, but a chance to change your life forever. Sounds like a dream, right? But what if I told you that this dream could quickly turn into a nightmare? What if the man who seems like your savior is hiding a dark secret, one that could shatter everything you've worked so hard to build? This is the story of Emily Carter, a woman who thought she'd finally caught a break, only to find herself trapped in a web of lies, deceit, and danger. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like something straight out of a thriller movie. But what if I told you that stories like this happen in real life more often than you'd think? That's why I want you to stick with me, because this isn't just a story about Emily. It's a story about trust, power, and the lengths people will go to protect their secret. And here's the thing, I'm not just going to tell you what happens. I'm going to take you on a journey, one where you'll feel every twist, every turn, and every heart-pounding moment as if you were right there with Emily. So, if you're ready to dive into a story that will keep you guessing until the very end, then keep watching, because you're about to uncover the truth behind the CEO who isn't who he seems. Let's start by painting the picture of Emily's life before everything changed. She's a hard-working, dedicated mom in her early 30s, living in a small apartment in Chicago. Her days are a blur of early mornings, late nights, and endless sacrifices. Her son, Liam, is her world, and she'd do anything to give him a better life. But no matter how hard she works, it never feels like enough. The bills keep piling up, and the stress is starting to take its toll. That's when she sees the job listing a personal assistant position for a high-profile CEO. The salary is more than she's ever dreamed of, and the benefits are beyond anything she's ever had. It's a lifeline, and she grabs it with both hands. Enter Daniel Blackwood, the enigmatic CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. On the surface, he's everything you'd expect from a man of his stature, charismatic, confident, and impossibly wealthy. He's the kind of man who commands a room just by walking into it, and Emily can't believe her luck when she lands the job. But from the very beginning, something feels off. It's not anything she can put her finger on, just little things, like the way he looks at her when he thinks she's not paying attention, or the way he always seems to know more about her than he should. At first, she brushes it off as paranoia. After all, this is her chance to turn her life around, and she's not about to let her nerves get in the way. But as the days turn into weeks, Emily starts to notice things that she can't ignore. Strange phone calls that Daniel takes in hushed tones, meetings that are canceled at the last minute for no apparent reason, and a safe in his office that he never opens in front of anyone. Then there are the rumors, whispers among the staff about the previous assistant who disappeared without a trace. Emily tries to convince herself that it's all just office gossip. But the more she digs, the more she realizes that there's something deeply wrong at Blackwood Enterprises. And when she stumbles upon a piece of information that she was never meant to see, she realizes that she's in way over her head. Now, I know you're probably wondering, what did Emily find? What's the big secret that Daniel is hiding? Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you just yet. But I will tell you this, it's bigger than anything you could imagine. It's the kind of secret that could destroy lives, and Emily is caught right in the middle of it. The question is, will she be able to uncover the truth before it's too late? Or will she become just another casualty in Daniel's dangerous game? As we dive deeper into this story, I want you to think about what you would do if you were in Emily's shoes. Would you risk everything to uncover the truth, even if it meant putting yourself in danger? Or would you turn a blind eye, hoping that the secrets would stay buried? These are the kinds of questions that will keep you hooked as we explore the twists and turns of Emily's journey. And trust me, there are plenty of twists. Just when you think you've figured it all out, something happens that will completely change everything you thought you knew. But before we get to the heart of the mystery, let's take a moment to talk about the themes that make this story so compelling. At its core, this is a story about power, who has it, who wants it, and what they're willing to do to keep it. It's about the lengths people will go to protect their secrets, and the sacrifices they'll make to maintain their image. But it's also a story about resilience, about a woman who refuses to back down, even when the odds are stacked against her. Emily is a character you'll root for, someone who embodies the strength and determination that we all wish we had. And then there's Daniel. Oh, Daniel. He's the kind of character you love to hate, charming on the surface, but with a darkness lurking just beneath. As the story unfolds, you'll find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about him. Is he a villain, or is there more to his story than meets the eye? That's the beauty of this tale. It keeps you guessing, right up until the very end. So, as we move forward, I want you to keep an open mind. Pay attention to the details, because in a story like this, every little thing matters. And most importantly, don't forget to ask yourself, what would you do if you were in Emily's shoes? Because by the time we reach the end of this video, you're going to be faced with some tough questions, and the answers might just surprise you. Now, before we get to the heart of the mystery, let's take a moment to talk about the setting. Blackwood Enterprises is more than just a company. It's a symbol of power, wealth, and influence. The headquarters are located in the heart of downtown Chicago, in a sleek, modern skyscraper that towers over the city. It's the kind of place where deals are made behind closed doors, and where the people at the top will do whatever it takes to stay there. But as Emily soon discovers, the higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. And then there's Emily's world outside of work, a stark contrast to the glitz and glamour of Blackwood Enterprises. Her small apartment is filled with the sounds of laughter and love, but also the constant worry of how she's going to make it through the month. It's a world that Daniel knows nothing about, and one that he's about to invade in ways that Emily could never have imagined. As we delve deeper into the story, you'll see how these two worlds collide, and how the choices Emily makes will have far-reaching consequences. But I'm not going to give away too much just yet. Instead, I want you to experience the story for yourself, to feel the tension, the fear, and the hope that Emily feels as she navigates this dangerous new world. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you ready to find out what really happens when a single mom takes a job with a rich CEO who's not who he seems? If the answer is yes, then keep watching, because this is just the beginning. And trust me, by the time we reach the end, you'll be begging for more. But for now, let's just say that Emily's life is about to change in ways she never could have imagined. And the question is, will she survive it? Stay tuned, because the answers are coming. But be warned, once you start this journey, there's no turning back. Emily's life had always been a balancing act, but now it felt like she was walking a tightrope without a safety net. The job at Blackwood Enterprises was supposed to be her saving grace, a way to finally give Liam the life he deserved. But as the days turned into weeks, the cracks in Daniel Blackwood's polished facade began to show. It started with small things, a cryptic comment here, a lingering stare there, but soon, Emily couldn't ignore the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The office, with its sleek glass walls and hushed whispers, felt more like a gilded cage than a place of opportunity. And then there were the late nights. Daniel often asked her to stay after hours, claiming he needed her help with urgent matters. At first, she thought it was just part of the job, but the way he watched her as she worked sent chills down her spine. It wasn't just professional interest, it was something darker, something she couldn't quite name. One evening, as Emily was organizing files in Daniel's office, she stumbled upon a folder that wasn't meant for her eyes. It was labeled Project Phoenix, and inside were documents that made her blood run cold. There were financial records, offshore accounts, and names she didn't recognize, but one name stood out, her own. Her heart raced as she flipped through the pages, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Why was her name in this file? What was Project Phoenix? Before she could dig deeper, she heard footsteps approaching. Panicking, she shoved the folder back into the drawer and pretended to be engrossed in her work. Daniel walked in, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if he could sense her unease. "Everything okay, Emily?" he asked, his voice smooth but laced with an edge that made her stomach twist. She forced a smile and nodded, but inside, she was screaming. That night, she couldn't sleep. The questions swirled in her mind, each one more terrifying than the last. Who was Daniel Blackwood really? And what did he want with her? As Emily tried to piece together the puzzle, she found herself drawn into a web of secrets that extended far beyond the walls of Blackwood Enterprises. She began to notice things she hadn't before, like the way certain employees would suddenly disappear, only to be replaced without explanation. There was a tension in the air, a sense that everyone was watching their backs. Even the security guards seemed to be on edge, their eyes darting around as if they were expecting something to happen. Emily started to feel like she was being watched too. She'd catch glimpses of a black sedan parked outside her apartment or hear faint clicks on her phone line. At first, she told herself it was just paranoia, but the more she noticed, the harder it became to ignore. She confided in her best friend, Sarah, who urged her to be careful. "This guy sounds dangerous," Sarah said, her voice filled with concern. "You need to get out of there before something happens." But Emily couldn't just walk away. Not yet. She needed answers, and she was determined to get them. Meanwhile, Daniel's behavior became increasingly erratic. He'd go from charming and attentive to cold and dismissive in the blink of an eye. One minute, he'd be praising her work, and the next, he'd be berating her for the smallest mistakes. It was like he was testing her, pushing her to see how far she could bend before she broke. Emily tried to keep her head down and focus on her job, but it was getting harder and harder to pretend everything was fine. Then, one night, everything changed. Daniel called her into his office after hours, his face unreadable. "I have a special assignment for you," he said, his voice low and deliberate. He handed her a sealed envelope and told her to deliver it to an address downtown. "Don't open it, and don't ask questions." Emily's hands trembled as she took the envelope. She wanted to refuse, to demand answers, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It was a look that said he wasn't asking, he was telling. The address led her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place was dark and eerily silent, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath her feet as she approached. Her heart pounded as she knocked on the door, half expecting no one to answer. But the door creaked open, revealing a shadowy figure who took the envelope without a word. As she turned to leave, she heard a voice behind her. "You shouldn't be here." She spun around, but the figure was gone, leaving her alone in the darkness. The encounter left her shaken, but it also fueled her determination to uncover the truth. She started digging deeper, using every resource she had to learn more about Daniel and his company. What she found was a labyrinth of lies, corruption, and betrayal that went far beyond anything she could have imagined. As Emily delved into the mystery, she began to uncover connections she never expected. She learned that Blackwood Enterprises wasn't just a legitimate business. It was a front for something much darker. There were rumors of illegal dealings, blackmail, and even ties to organized crime. The more she uncovered, the more dangerous her situation became. She started receiving anonymous threats, warning her to stop digging. But Emily wasn't the type to back down. She knew she was in over her head, but she also knew she couldn't let Daniel get away with whatever he was hiding. She just had to be smart about it. She started documenting everything, every strange encounter, every suspicious file, every whispered conversation. She knew it was risky, but it was the only way to protect herself. At the same time, Emily's personal life was unraveling. Liam was starting to notice her stress, and it broke her heart to see him worried. She tried to shield him from the chaos, but it was getting harder to keep up the facade. She found herself lying to him about where she was going and why she was working so late. The guilt weighed heavily on her, but she told herself it was for his sake. If she could just figure out what Daniel was up to, she could finally give Liam the life he deserved. But as the days went on, the line between right and wrong began to blur. Emily found herself doing things she never thought she'd do, like sneaking into Daniel's office after hours, or following him to secret meetings. She knew it was dangerous, but she couldn't stop. She was in too deep. Then, one night, everything came to a head. Emily was in Daniel's office, searching for more clues, when she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The door creaked open, and there he was, Daniel, his eyes blazing with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice cold and menacing. Emily's mind raced as she tried to come up with an excuse, but before she could say anything, Daniel grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. "You've been poking your nose where it doesn't belong," he hissed. "And now you're going to regret it." Emily's heart sank as she realized the gravity of her situation. She had pushed too far, and now there was no turning back. But even as fear coursed through her veins, she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going down without a fight. As the tension between Emily and Daniel reached its breaking point, new players began to enter the scene. There was Detective Mark Harris, a no-nonsense cop who had been investigating Blackwood Enterprises for years. He had his own reasons for wanting to take Daniel down, and he saw Emily as the key to finally cracking the case. Then there was Vanessa Blackwood, Daniel's estranged wife, who seemed to know more about his secrets than she let on. Vanessa reached out to Emily, offering her help in exchange for information. But could she be trusted? Or was she just another pawn in Daniel's game? As alliances shifted and new threats emerged, Emily found herself caught in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. She knew she was running out of time, but she also knew she couldn't give up. Not when the stakes were this high. The story was far from over, and the twists and turns were just beginning. Emily's journey was one of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. But as the shadows closed in around her, one question remained. Would she be able to outsmart Daniel and expose the truth? Or would she become just another victim in his deadly game? The answers were coming, but they would come at a price. And as Emily stood on the edge of the abyss, she knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Emily's heart pounded as Daniel's grip tightened on her arm, his eyes boring into hers with a mix of anger and something else, something she couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe? Or was it desperation? She didn't have time to figure it out. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" he sneered, his voice low and dangerous. "But you have no idea what you're messing with." Emily's mind raced, searching for a way out, but before she could react, Daniel released her and took a step back, his expression shifting to one of cold calculation. "You want to know the truth?" he said, his tone eerily calm now. "Fine. But remember, you asked for this." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a file, tossing it onto the table in front of her. Emily hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened the file, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It was a dossier on her. Every detail of her life was there, from her childhood to her current struggles. But that wasn't the worst part. The file also contained photos of Liam, her son, playing in the park, walking to school, even sleeping in his bed. Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, her stomach churning with a mix of rage and terror. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Because, Emily, you're more important to this than you realize. And now that you've seen this, there's no going back." The revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about her job or some corporate scandal, this was personal. Daniel had been watching her, studying her, long before she ever set foot in Blackwood Enterprises. But why? What could he possibly want from a single mom struggling to make ends meet? Emily's mind raced as she tried to piece it all together, but the more she thought about it, the more questions she had. She knew one thing for certain, though. She couldn't let Daniel get away with this. Not when Liam's safety was at stake. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. But before she could make a move, Daniel dropped another bombshell. "You're not the first, you know," he said casually, as if they were discussing the weather. "There were others before you. Good people, hard workers. But they made the mistake of asking too many questions. And now? Let's just say they're no longer a problem. Emily's blood ran cold as the implications sank in. Was he threatening her? Or was this his way of warning her to back off? Either way, she knew she was in way over her head. But she also knew she couldn't let fear stop her. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. As Emily left Daniel's office that night, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, anger, determination, they all battled for dominance as she tried to figure out her next move. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed help. That's when she remembered Detective Mark Harris. He had reached out to her before, offering his assistance, but she had been too wary to trust him. Now, she didn't have a choice. She called him the next day, arranging a meeting at a quiet cafe far from prying eyes. When she told him everything, the file, the threats, the photos of Liam, he listened intently, his expression growing darker. With each word, "This is bigger than I thought," he said finally, his voice grim. "Blackwood's been on my radar for years, but I could never get close enough to take him down. If what you're saying is true, this could be the break I've been waiting for." Emily felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished when Mark added, "But you need to be careful. If Blackwood finds out you're talking to me, it won't just be your life on the line." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. She knew the risks, but she also knew she couldn't back down now. Not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. Meanwhile, Vanessa Blackwood's sudden reappearance added another layer of complexity to the situation. Emily hadn't expected to hear from Daniel's estranged wife again, but when Vanessa showed up at her apartment one evening, she knew something was up. "We need to talk," Vanessa said, her tone urgent. "Alone!" Emily hesitated, but curiosity got the better of her. She let Vanessa in, and what she heard next left her reeling. Vanessa claimed that Daniel had been using Blackwood Enterprises as a front for money laundering and other illegal activities for years. But that wasn't all. She also revealed that Daniel had a secret one that could destroy him if it ever got out. "He's not who you think he is," Vanessa said, her voice trembling with emotion. "And if you want to take him down, you're going to need my help." Emily didn't know whether to trust Vanessa or not, but she couldn't deny that the woman's information could be valuable. The problem was, Vanessa's motives were unclear. Was she really trying to help? Or was she just using Emily to get back at Daniel? Either way, Emily knew she had to tread carefully. One wrong move, and she could lose everything. As the pieces of the puzzle began to come together, Emily found herself caught in a dangerous game of deception and betrayal. Every step forward seemed to bring her closer to the truth, but it also put her in greater danger. She started noticing strange things like the way her phone would sometimes cut out mid-conversation, or the way strangers seemed to be watching her whenever she left the house. She knew Daniel was behind it, but there was nothing she could do to prove it. Not yet. She also began to suspect that someone close to her might be feeding information to Daniel. Was it Vanessa? Mark? Or someone else entirely? The paranoia was eating away at her, but she couldn't let it distract her. She had to stay focused. For Liam's sake. Then, just when she thought things couldn't get any worse, an unexpected twist threw everything into chaos. Emily received a package at work, a small, unmarked box with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note that read, "Play me." Her hands shook as she plugged the drive into her computer, her heart pounding in her chest. What she saw on the screen left her speechless. It was a video, a recording of Daniel meeting with a group of shadowy figures in what looked like an underground bunker. The conversation was cryptic, but one thing was clear. They were planning something big. Something dangerous. And Emily was right in the middle of it. The video ended with a chilling message. "You're running out of time." Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she had just seen. Who had sent her the video? And why? Was it a warning? Or a trap? She didn't know, but she knew one thing for certain. The stakes had just gotten a whole lot higher. As the tension continued to build, Emily found herself facing impossible choices. Should she trust Mark and Vanessa, or was she better off going it alone? Should she confront Daniel directly, or would that only put her and Liam in greater danger? Every decision felt like a gamble, and the pressure was starting to take its toll. But through it all, one thing kept her going: the thought of Liam. She couldn't let him down. She wouldn't. No matter what it took, she was going to protect him, even if it meant risking everything. The question was, would it be enough? Or was she already in too deep to make it out alive? The answers were coming, but they would come at a cost. And as Emily stood on the brink of the unknown, she knew one thing for certain: the fight of her life was just beginning. Emily's hands trembled as she stared at the USB drive, the weight of what she had just seen pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. The video had changed everything. It wasn't just about Daniel's secrets anymore. It was about something far bigger, far more dangerous. She knew she had to act fast, but every move felt like a potential misstep. With the clock ticking, she reached out to Detective Mark Harris, arranging a meeting in a secluded park where they could talk without fear of being overheard. When she showed him the video, his face turned pale. "This is worse than I thought," he said, his voice low and urgent. "If what's on here is true, Daniel isn't just involved in illegal activities, he's planning something catastrophic. We need to move now before it's too late." Emily nodded, her heart pounding. She knew the risks, but she also knew she couldn't back down. Not now. Not when so many lives were at stake. The plan was simple but dangerous. Mark would use the video as evidence to secure a warrant for Daniel's arrest, while Emily would continue to play her role at Blackwood Enterprises, gathering as much information as she could without raising suspicion. It was a risky move, but it was their only shot at taking Daniel down before he could execute whatever he was planning. As Emily returned to work the next day, she felt like she was walking into a lion's den. Every glance, every word from Daniel felt loaded with hidden meaning, and she had to fight to keep her composure. But she couldn't let him see her fear. She had to stay strong. For Liam, for herself, and for everyone else who had been caught in Daniel's web of lies. Meanwhile, Vanessa Blackwood's role in the unfolding drama became clearer. She reached out to Emily again, this time with a startling confession. "I know what Daniel's planning," she said, her voice trembling. "And I can help you stop him. But you have to trust me." Emily was torn. Vanessa had been elusive and secretive from the start, and trusting her felt like a gamble. But with time running out, Emily didn't have the luxury of hesitation. She agreed to meet Vanessa at a remote location, where Vanessa handed over a stack of documents that detailed Daniel's plans. "He's been working with a group of powerful people to orchestrate a massive financial collapse," Vanessa explained. "They're going to manipulate the stock market, wipe out billions, and then swoop in to buy up everything at rock-bottom prices. It's not just about money, it's about power. And he's willing to destroy countless lives to get it." Emily's stomach churned as she realized the full scope of Daniel's ambition. This wasn't just about her or Liam anymore. This was about everyone. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Emily and Mark worked tirelessly to gather the evidence they needed to stop Daniel. But just as they were preparing to make their move, disaster struck. Daniel called Emily into his office, his expression unreadable. "I know what you've been up to," he said, his voice cold and calm. "Did you really think you could outsmart me?" Emily's heart raced as she tried to keep her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Daniel smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You're a terrible liar, Emily. But I'll give you credit, you've got guts. Too bad it's going to get you killed." Before she could react, Daniel's security team burst into the room, grabbing her and dragging her out of the office. She struggled, but it was no use. She was outnumbered and outmatched. What happened next was a blur. Emily was taken to a remote location where she was held captive in a dimly lit room. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out a way to escape, but the odds were stacked against her. Just when she thought all hope was lost, the door burst open and Mark Harris stormed in, followed by a team of armed officers. "We've got you, Blackwood," Mark said, his voice filled with triumph. Daniel, who had been watching from the shadows, sneered. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." But before he could say more, he was handcuffed and led away, his empire crumbling around him. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. Emily was finally free, but the cost had been high. She had risked everything to bring Daniel down, and the scars, both physical and emotional, would take time to heal. But as she held Liam close, she knew it had been worth it. She had protected him, and in doing so, she had protected countless others from Daniel's greed and ambition. The media coverage of Daniel's arrest was relentless, and Emily found herself thrust into the spotlight as a hero. But she didn't see herself that way. She was just a mom who had done what she had to do. As the dust settled, Emily began to rebuild her life. She started a new job, one that allowed her to spend more time with Liam, and she slowly began to heal from the trauma she had endured. But the experience had changed her in ways she couldn't fully articulate. She had faced her darkest fears and come out stronger on the other side. And while she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she also knew she had the strength to face whatever came her way. The final twist came months later, when Emily received a letter from Vanessa. In it, Vanessa revealed that she had been working undercover for the FBI all along, gathering evidence against Daniel to bring him down. "I couldn't tell you the truth," Vanessa wrote. "Not while the operation was still ongoing. But I want you to know that you were never alone. You were braver than you realized, and you played a crucial role in stopping a monster." Emily felt a mix of emotions as she read the letter: relief, gratitude, and a sense of closure. She had finally gotten the answers she had been searching for, and while the journey had been harrowing, it had also been transformative. As she looked out at the horizon, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, not just for herself, but for Liam and for everyone who had been affected by Daniel's actions. And as she took a deep breath, she knew one thing for certain: no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Because she was stronger than she had ever imagined, and nothing and no one could ever take that away from her.